So this week's update is themed "The Devil is in the Details," and here's why. Most of us take for granted the fact that we can always just reach around and pull this guy out of our pocket. Now imagine that you or I just spent 7 to 10 years in prison. Pretty much anything we want to do afterwards, or anything we want to get, or anything we might be eligible for, will require us to pull out one of these. However, what if your license expired? What if you went in without an address? What if you don't have a computer? In fact, if you follow this story, you may remember that we talked about the fact that when you leave prison, you get $200 to pay for your bus fare and your clothes. You got $200, nowhere to live, no money. And here is what the San Francisco Reentry Council has given people to help them try and figure out how to get an identification and possibly some benefits. When you start looking at it, the details are pretty overwhelming. Keep in mind that most government documents, certainly in health, are supposed to be written at the 4th grade level. Imagine that you have serious withdrawal, maybe some mental health issues, little brain trauma, possibly you were in the developmentally delayed classes when you were in school, or you dropped out. How in God's name are you going to get this kind of document filled out on your own? First, you might need to get your birth certificate, but it can't just be any birth certificate. You may have to go to the county of your birth, and it will cost you $14, and you need to have it notarized. And there is this weird circular loop to all this. In order to get your state driver's license, you're going to need some kind of California identification. But isn't your driver's license your California identification? And to get your Social Security card, you're going to need some identification for that. And while a copy of the card may be free, just like the birth certificate, the driver's license isn't. In fact, it can get kind of pricey if you're working with a $200 budget and you've already taken some hefty chunks out of it. A reduced fee card, if you can meet income requirements, is still going to be $7. And we're only just beginning, because one of the crucial things you need to do when you get out of prison is to make sure you don't have any outstanding warrants. Otherwise, you're going to bounce right back in. And in order to get your rap sheet, okay, we got to get through a few pages here. Right down here, you got to have this form filled out. And they'll give you a nice copy of the California Penal Code. And you have to sign this form saying that you want a waiver of the fee. And you have to have proof of indigence. I don't even think it explains to you how to get proof of indigence. But getting your FBI record cleared, that'll cost you $18 too. And many people may not know, more and more shelters, certainly health care, they want you to have that ID too. That means there's a really good reason why homeless fairs, like Project Homeless Connect, will have an entire section devoted to identification. Something I'd seen but never really understood before I started delving into this. And on a related journalistic note, I contacted the California Department of Corrections this week to get some specifications on their data tables that are available publicly online. I found out some interesting stuff. I had to speak to a researcher to discover that the number of arrests, or it says parole, it says the number of felons arrested each year is actually not the number of felons arrested each year, it's the number of arrests. And similarly, the number of paroles each year is not the number of people paroled, it's the number of paroles, which means we're not talking about people, we're talking about events. And the more I tried to get into the devil of those details, I was actually told that I had to go through their communications office because they did not want to be talking to me in that depth without having the okay from their PR people. That was a little bit of a surprise since it's supposed to be public information and you do want people to represent your data accurately. And in fact, I found out that the Department of Corrections, since they implemented their new COMPASS system to try and track high-risk re-offenders, does track who's been homeless for the last 12 months, but that information is also not available. Neither one of these jobs, I think, whether it's a felon getting an ID card or me trying to get at the data on the number of homeless prisoners, those jobs are not for the faint of heart. So you may be asking yourself, isn't this a little off topic? I mean, what really does this have to do with homelessness and the prison system and the triangle between San Francisco and LA? Well, the fact is, this is just the first step of trying to deal with your life out of prison. And if it is this hard, are we damning people to being homeless because they can't even get identification? And a bigger question to me becomes, shouldn't the prison system be able to identify its own prisoners? Why is it that the individual prisoner must undertake this monumental task the moment they are released? Why instead don't we as a society decide to help to get identification, basic identification, dealt with before someone is released? At least as a first step to helping them get their life back together so they're not doomed to live on the streets, or worse yet, bounce right back through committing another crime usually. Our California recidivism rate is 70%. That's kind of eye-poppingly high. And I think a simple step like this, done by a well-paid government agency that has total control over the individual and their identification, maybe should be something that we should think about doing as a way of stopping the cycle of homelessness and incarceration. Hope you'll stay tuned and contribute. This is a project through Spot Us that was generated as an idea through the California Health Fellowship at the Annenberg Center. Thank you.